which is kind of where I want to take this conversation to a degree. But before we get there, I want to talk about the bubble, all right? And I have my issues with the college football bubble because, one, I believe that college football players should be paid for their efforts. And two, you're actually not going to be able to defend this if you go into court. And it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. So Ross Dellinger at Sports Illustrated wrote a piece about this, about the only bubble in college football today is at UNC, and now it looks like it's going to be at Notre Dame as well. And I want to give you a couple of paragraphs from his piece that I think are interesting here. Get your take on them. College football's own leaders have spoken out in the past over such an arrangement. Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott was most vocal about it, declaring that in-person classes were a requirement for on-campus athletics. He called it a gating issue, with several of his colleagues feeling the same. That includes Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick, who, when asked about the issue in May, said the students have to be on campus. 3 months later, his own university has shut down classes for 2 weeks while the football program continues training. Is that right? Is that wrong? It depends on who you ask. He asked a former NFL agent, Ellen Zavian, who is a law professor at George Washington now, and she made it very clear. Look, the decades-old argument of their student athletes before their students is about to fall apart. She said, you ever hear your actions are so deafening that I can't hear what you're saying? This will be used to say that schools are treating athletes essentially like employees and they should be getting hazard pay. Now, from that, she's right. Second thing is, dying on the hill of shut it down for football is not necessarily what everybody wants, because there are people that make $6 million, right? Lincoln Riley. And then there are people that make 35 grand just trying to man the ticket office. I don't like the bubble because I think, one, they're not being paid, and two, I don't think it's an actual bubble, dog. Like, the difference between the NBA and the NHL and college football is these dudes don't all live together. Like, we act as if these players are staying in Headington Hall at Oklahoma all together. That's not even happening at UNC or Notre Dame. They live off campus and they socialize, and dare I say it, they fornicate. So, like, where do you think the line is with what they're calling a bubble? Because all it's going to take is one dude. But I'm sure that they've been read the riot act on this. It ain't going to stop anything because they're their most hot to trot as they are at any other age right now. And watching how these commissioners and athletic directors who had told the U.S. vice president, like Bob Bosley to Mike Pence, was, if we don't have students on campus, we won't play football. All I can look at you and tell you is just you're lying to me right now. And that's even worse than you being hypocritical to me, is to lie to me and say, wait a second, well, what had happened was, because you're not going to be able to defend this. I mean, where are you on this situation?
Okay. To put it bluntly, the concept of creating a college football bubble is incredibly ridiculous, and it's just not feasible. I mean, this is never going to happen when you're dealing with 20-something kids who are in college, and they're still going about other activities throughout the day. I mean, I think we all understand that the NBA bubble has worked so well because it is literally closed off. These guys are only around other NBA players and the administrators or staff members that are helping making this thing possible. In college football, these guys are spread out throughout the entire college town. They obviously have friends and family outside of the program that they're going to want to go see. And they have to still go grocery shopping or get haircuts or go about their business in everyday life. Like, they do not have the facilities that these NBA players have. And so for me, I just think this conversation is incredibly hilarious because you're just never going to be able to pull something like this off. I don't really care what program you are or where you're located. So as a result, look, you can bring up any argument you want, right? Like, this is ridiculous because these guys should be getting paid and you're using them like employees. Or you can bring up the fact that it's just never going to work if students are on campus as well. For me, it's just never going to work because you're just dealing with college athletes. And at the end of the day, they still have to go be people. And as a result, man, I don't know. I just feel like any program that's kidding themselves, they're going to be able to pull this off, whether it be North Carolina or Notre Dame, is going to be finding a quick and harsh reality here very soon, because these kids, man, as much as you want to stop them from doing anything else other than football, at the end of the day, we call them student athletes. They're also just people in general. And that reality will be realized as soon as they try and put together these bubble type of situations.
That's where I'm at, man. Like, I understand that you're going to try to get this rent check from each one of these students for housing that they're not going to use. You're going to cash it, and then you're going to be like, our bad. We thought we could do it, when you're lying to us. That's one thing. But it also means that you're probably going to be able to start your college football season when you want to start your college football season. Then it's a question about whether or not you're going to be able to end it on the right tone. So, look, I'm going to keep watching this, and I think I've been pretty right about this the whole time, but we'll watch it. Like, all right, so the Big Ten is a dumpster fire. And now it's a fascinating circus of a dumpster fire, because we got stuff like, we got a report from Jeff Snook that there's a rogue set of Big Ten schools, 6 of them, that want to go and play against each other 2 times apiece, home and away, in an abbreviated season. And right now it's like 4 teams that are in, right? But Wisconsin and Michigan are not. Obviously, Ohio State is leading the way on this, because everybody there wants to play football. And yet, publicly, Gene Smith has been saying, we're not playing football in the winter. The spring is what we're going to try to move toward. Meanwhile, we got Randy Wade, Sean Wade's dad, who is planning to fly from Florida to Chicago to go to the Rosemont office in Illinois to go and beat down the door and say, yo, have you not heard us? Did you not see Justin Fields' petition? Did you not hear him on national radio saying, I'm going to be heartbroken if I find out that 3 other conferences are playing and we're not playing? So first, this idea of a rogue season where you got 6 teams that will play each other for, I got to believe, a fictitious trophy. So that what? So that the kids can get good film? Okay, cool. So that the kids might have an opportunity to compete for a national championship? If you're Ohio State, maybe, depending on how the committee wants to see that. But like, Colin, I have never, ever, ever heard of anything like this. But that's also one of the reasons I love college football. It's bizarre, it's weird, it's unpredictable, and people are just going to do what they want to do. Proof is, Oklahoma State claims a national championship that they didn't win. You know, we have teams that will rank themselves in the top 25 going 6-6. Like, we will claim national champions that aren't ours to claim, and yet we can also have a rogue set of schools that would think about perhaps trying to put together a season in the fall for the sake of putting a season together in the fall, when right now you're also telling your commits, hey, look, stick with us. You're going to get to play football for real in January, February, and March. Like, what do you think about this?
Well, I think, if we're being really honest with each other, I think, number one, it gets the kids film, and number 2, it gets the schools money. And that's why this is even on the table, because it's obvious to me that a lot of programs cannot bear the thought of not having some sort of influx of money, attention, recruiting momentum, and, of course, the natural boost that come with NFL draft picks following a season. Now, if they do pull it off, I will watch every game. I will refuse to turn it off every single week. I don't care if it's Iowa, Nebraska for the second time around, and if it's 6-3 in the third quarter. I will be on the edge of my seat just because of some of the implications that a 6-team league provides. Now, look, my biggest thing right now is I feel like I really understand this from the perspective of opportunity, right? I mean, that's why Mr. Wade is flying out there, supposedly, deal with the Big Ten. That's why Justin Fields is starting up a petition. Because I'll be honest with you, man, I had Ohio State win a national title this year. Mm-hmm. And now that that's gone, I mean, that's a massive deal squandered by people who apparently have not really kept others in the light of the situation. That's, for me, the biggest problem that comes from this, is I think we're really learning a ton about some of the leadership positions in college football and specifically within these two conferences, and how, I don't want to say ignorant they are to other people's thoughts and opinions, but really just consumed with their own. And as a result, man, if this leads to a 6-team league that kind of spikes their decisions, I'm all for it, because I don't know how feasible that is. I don't know what would come of it. I really don't know how it would impact the rest of college football. But if it means that they are able to enlighten some of these leaders and make them realize that college football is a team sport both on and off the field, then by all means, go for it, and I hope we get a better result from it.
Hey, man, if everybody's going to keep playing, I understand why you don't want to be the people not playing football. I totally get that.
Yeah.
I also get how the money is really showing us who people are. Because, yeah, it's all talk in April and May, but when it comes time to actually do something, the Big Ten said, no, we're not going to play. And there's also this thought that the real nefarious take, Larry Scott and Kevin Warren made the decision not because it was in the interest of public health, but because it was in the interest of stopping players organizing, which is wild to me, because you've undermined your argument if you are the Big 12, the ACC, or the SEC, and that's not going to exempt the Pac-12 or the Big Ten from any legislation that might come down, especially as we're having name, image, and likeness stuff that is being legislated as we speak in Washington, D.C. So as I started this segment, it's a cluster, dog. But on the same front here, I'm really interested in the top of the recruiting rankings and how this is reflected, right? Because whether it's coincidence or not, Alabama has been able to keep playing football. Alabama has also added to its growing tally of 2021 recruits. In April, they're ranked number 55 in the country with one commit in Deontay Lawson. In August, they're number 2 in the country and 2 points behind an Ohio State program that I thought was going to have an insurmountable lead. Because at one point, we're talking about a 60-point gap between them and number 2 in the rankings. And yet and still, I'm looking at this and I'm going, maybe there's something to be said here about the folks that are benefiting from being able to play football and the continued optics of how people will see the Big Ten or the Pac-12 in the future, about the zealots, all folks who think that we should be playing football anyway, are probably going to hold a grudge against those two leagues, which also puts the Big 12 in a very interesting position, because I was ready to see this league dissolved. And I'm still kind of ready to see this league dissolved. But Message Board RJ is looking at this situation going, hey, there's room for poaching here. Nebraska, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State. Y'all wanna join up? Y'all wanna make a league? Y'all wanna go knock down the SEC's door? Y'all wanna go Bigfoot this thing? Because we can. Like, what do you think about that?
No, well, the idea of a reconfiguration is always fun to discuss, right? Especially when it comes to thought of Oklahoma or Texas getting to play Ohio State or Nebraska again every season. And I personally would love to see Lincoln Riley walk out to an absolute whiteout stadium out there in Happy Valley. Penn State, I mean, some of these atmospheres added to the Big 12 Conference would be huge, right? And it would add even more notoriety as the conference kind of struggled with dealing with the natural power in the SEC or the ACC, who's kind of capitalized on Clemson's momentum. I think, obviously, this is all a big speculation because we've heard time and again, hey, there's interest, but it's not going to really happen. There's interest, but it can't be pulled off this year. So my hope is that eventually the Big 12 Conference finds a way to finally capitalize on some of the blunders that have taken this season and beforehand, and eventually expand this conference into something that's really taken seriously. Like, I would love Ohio State, Oklahoma. I would love OU, Nebraska again every season. I would love to see Texas, Penn State. Iowa, Iowa State as a conference game. Like, those are big matchups that would really benefit every program in that quote-unquote super conference. Whether it happens or not, obviously we'll see. I'm not going to buy a ton of stock in it right now, just given some of the ups and downs we've already been through. But I'm always going to be here for blue blood programs, for big name programs in the world of college football going at each other every single weekend, and eventually every single outcome has an impact on some sort of standing. So I hope so, man. One of the things I want to see at some point is OU Nebraska again. I know that's coming up very soon. I was hoping and praying we get it this year. I don't think we will, but man, I really would love to see that happen someday.